Okay, and we're live streaming and everything. Great. All right, welcome everyone to this meeting of the City of Philomath City Council. Today is September 8th, 2025. It's currently 5:32 p.m. We are going to start with the work session, but if anyone's watching online, we will start our regular session at 7 p.m. Where we will have some more real business, but our work session will have the utility rate study discussion following up on a previous work session about the utility rate study. So with that, I'll ask for a roll call.
Jessica Andrade.
Present.
Diane Crocker.
Here.
Mr. Irwin.
Present.
Teresa Nielsen.
Here.
Richard Salsa.
Present.
Victor McMorris.
Present. Thank you so much. All right, well, with that, I guess, am I turning it over to Mike for the utility rate?
Well, I'm gonna kind of pass it up to.
Oh, well, look at that.
It's,
Just hot potato.
yeah, put Jen on the spot.
Okay.
We came back with the information that you requested. We got the 3 tiers in there, we got the rates. And we'll probably end up asking you for some direction on where we want to go the next time around. Hopefully we'll be adopting something next time. So with that, I'm gonna turn this over to Jen.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Good evening, council members. Thank you so much for having me with you again tonight. Mike, it was a little bit choppy for me when you were talking, so I might repeat a bit of what you said, and apologies in advance. I was in front of this group on July 28th and have been working with staff since that time. So we presented some recommended adjustments to the way the city recovers costs for its water, sewer, and storm drainage utilities through utility rates. We got some good feedback. We got some head nodding on some kind of tweaks to those rate structures. Others deserve more consideration, more discussion. So I'm back today hoping that we can talk through some of the remaining items and get guidance on how to proceed. Now I will share my screen with you. Give me just 1 minute. Oh, I'm so sorry. I need to actually request or be approved to share a screen. Okay.
Try now.
All right, perfect. It looks like it's working. Can you all see?
Maximize.
We can see it. Crystal's working on making it bigger.
Okay.
You guys got it, you could pin it, that's good.
I like having captions like that.
But can we make them not be like that? Oh,
There you go.
yay.
Well, I meant okay, like wonderful.
All right, it's all yours.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Just as a reminder, a refresher, in case our firm's name is not familiar to you, it's Raftelis Financial Consultants. I'm a vice president with the firm. I've been there for nearly 15 years now. Our core business is water, wastewater, and stormwater financial planning and rate studies. We've worked with thousands of utilities across the U.S. And Raftelis has grown to provide some other services, but this financial planning and cost of service studies are really core to our business. So I come to you with a good deal of kind of industry knowledge and relationships with others that are deeply entrenched in the industry as well. The focus of our study was twofold. We've looked at the amount of revenue you all would need to support your utilities in the coming years. We also looked at the way those revenues are recovered from your utility customers. You'll recall from a few weeks ago that we characterized these as kind of the size of the pie and how the pie is sliced. Today, we're focused more on how the pie is sliced I do have some numbers to put back in front of you, but I want to make sure that we get the guidance on changes that we may make to the rate structures themselves, so that we can then move forward to be able to put rates in front of you for your consideration. So we are seeking some guidance there. Now, the big picture on revenue requirements, water and stormwater needs are increasing pretty significantly. You have actually been under recovering in your storm drainage utility. So this doesn't even sort of represent the full increase that might be needed. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but I just want to highlight that that's pretty significant as well. Wastewater revenue requirements in the very next year actually look a little bit lower, but those can fluctuate over time. And so our recommendation there is generally to keep that revenue target at the same level, and kind of build up a little bit of a healthier fund balance to prepare for the future. I'll sit on this slide for just a moment. Many of these slides you've seen before. This is the one we kind of wrapped up with at the end of the last session. And these are the topics that we covered. So I've bolded the ones that I believe deserve some more discussion, but we'll cover all of them tonight, just in case you have any further thoughts or questions. The sewer loading was one topic that didn't actually seem to have the most favorable response. Again, we'll still talk about that, but sort of in the initial kind of tally moving into this session, that was one that could potentially come off the list.
And Jen, let me just really quick, I forgot to say this at the beginning.
Sure, yeah.
I think for tonight, just to make sure we have enough time to discuss, if you have questions, if you can just write them down or keep track of them and let Jen get through the whole presentation, and then we can kind of go over all the questions at the end. I want to make sure we don't get like halfway through the presentation and then have to rush through the other half. So we'll hold the questions till the end. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, yep, no problem. Good system. All right, so water, we'll start by discussing water. This is probably the bulk of the presentation, and we've got a few topics to cover within the water rate structure. The overall increase needed, I think I showed it a couple of slides ago, it's about 24%. The estimated revenue needed for FY27 is about 2.4 million. So the key drivers for this increase are, funding for capital projects, particularly for the upcoming water treatment plant, and making up for a little bit of a deficit or drawdown of that fund balance in recent years. When we present rates, we'll be talking about the FY27 target rates. If you made sort of a one-time jump right to the level needed, we have talked about stepping up rates over time, maybe every 6 months, over a period of time, which is also an option that we've modeled. I didn't want to throw, way too many numbers at you tonight. So just sort of keep in mind that anything we're looking at, if needed, you all have the option to consider more of a stepwise adjustment to get to that point. And then all of the rates also in this presentation, as before, they do represent kind of the recommended rate design. But if we need to make any refinements based on your direction tonight, we will do so following this meeting and put a final recommended rate sheet in front of you shortly. All right, the FY27 target number for water is built up from, of course, your ongoing operation maintenance costs, as well as a number of capital projects. You'll see kind of 3 years worth of capital projects here. That is really just meant to represent that they all can be in kind of different phases at points in time. And it's not always a surefire projection which one will be started in a given year, but these are sort of the near-term projects that we have programmed in the nearest couple of years. Some of them are funded through rate revenue. Others are funded through other means, including system development charges or grants. We also modeled borrowing in FY26 to pay for some of these near-term projects. And then that borrowing will be paid back over future years. So these have all been accounted for in the financial plan and the rate model. And it represents, a good deal of investment in your system. I just want to pull up for a moment your current rate structure and rates for water. So the current residential structure includes a monthly base charge, depending on the customer's meter size. And it also includes a volumetric charge per unit. For this presentation, and as your structure is designed, 1 unit equals 1 CCF or 100 cubic feet, which is just about 748 gallons. So just put that units out there so we're all kind of speaking the same language. For your non-residential customers, that is your multifamily, residential, commercial, and industrial customers, the structure is similar. The base charge is currently based on meter size, except for multifamily residential, where the charge is associated more with the number of units in the property and not with the size of the meter. These customer classes also have a volumetric charge based on water consumption. School and city irrigation pay a kind of a special rate for those irrigation purposes. But otherwise, that flat rate is the same across the customer classes. Now, the first set of proposed adjustments to your rate structure is 2 different things that relate to those fixed charges, which again are charged to all of your customer classes: residential, multifamily, commercial, and industrial. The first of the 2 items related to fixed charges is the kind of ratio of revenue recovered from your fixed charge compared to your volumetric charge. Currently, you recover about 25% of your water revenue from these fixed charges, which represent kind of an availability to serve at any point in time, as well as sort of the costs associated with managing customers and billing and all of that stuff that's kind of unrelated to the amount of water used. So customers pay regardless of how much they use. I recommend that we sort of bump up that 25% to about 30%. This provides greater revenue stability for the utility, even if usage patterns change. And as you can probably tell, and I think we talked about a little bit last time, the vast majority of your costs are static, they're unchanging, they're fixed. So we certainly want to charge people based on the amount of water that they use, but changing that ratio a little bit can kind of just improve the stability of your revenue stream. The second item then, also related to fixed charges, is specifically related to the multifamily unit charges, which again are currently calculated based on the number of units in a property rather than the number of meters or the size of the meter. We do recommend adjusting this to a per meter approach, as you do for all the other customer classes, just for better alignment there kind of internally. And this also aligns with industry best practices as well. Chris, I was going to pause for discussion. Do you want me to just charge on ahead? We'll discuss at the end.
I think that'd be good.
Okay. Alrighty. Moving on then. This slide just illustrates the projected meter charges for next year under that approach. So sort of bumping up the revenue recovery from those fixed charges and shifting the multifamily approach so that it's treated the same way based on meter charge. I will point out that in the past, 3/4 inch and 1 inch meters have had the same fixed charge for the residential and non-residential classes. This year, it's a little bit different, but our recommendation was and continues to be that they sort of stay in alignment across the customer classes because it really represents the same kind of set of services and availability to serve. All right. Moving on then to volumetric tiers. We explored adding volumetric tiered charges specifically for the residential customer class. Currently, there's a flat rate for each unit of water consumed. Again, 100 cubic feet or 748 gallons. To meet the revenue requirement, if we kept that flat rate or uniform approach, those rates would increase about 18%. So from 655 to 771. And I should point out, sorry, I should have said this earlier, but the rates in here are kind of raw, they're unrounded. They will go through your normal kind of rounding exercise to make sure that it's consistent with how the city establishes rates in the first place. We just have kind of the raw numbers here to talk through. We did talk about that alternative approach of having variable charges per tier of usage, which could be designed to charge a higher usage, a higher amount per unit. We had originally looked at a 2-tiered structure where the first tier would go from 0 to 12 units. That would be at a lower rate per unit. And the second tier would be for anything over 12 units. That would be at a higher rate per unit. This can and is can be and is a recommended structure for communities who have water supply concerns or are really trying to promote water conservation for one reason or another. The breakpoint of 12 units addresses kind of very high users within the residential class, and it only constitutes about 9.8% of all of the residential bills in the year worth of bills that we were looking at for this analysis. So it could impact, very large households or folks with gardens, which are totally fair concerns. Primarily, though, based on the data, it appears to be that the higher usage kind of over that threshold is correlated with irrigation, so it's seasonal. And instituting a tiered system would, reflect greater cost of providing those higher volumes of water. So just the capacity, the storage to address peak demands. Which was a consideration in the cost of service. Let's see. All right. In that discussion last month, we had also, I think it was brought up that we might want to look at 3 tiers instead of 2. So we incorporated that into the analysis in the interim. As you might expect, the results sort of show that the lowest tier, if we look at a tier from 0 to 6 units, has an even lower rate. It's actually lower than this year's rate, which is notable. The highest tier is even higher than under the 2-tier system, and then that middle is kind of the sweet spot right in between. As before, we do have the kind of percent of usage and the percent of bills that falls into these different tiers. And as a reminder, for example, if someone used 7 units of water, what we would be talking about is units 0 through 6 at the kind of lowest rate, and unit 7 at that next rate. So you don't kind of immediately get all of your usage pushed into the next tier, but you're billed per unit depending on which tier that unit falls into. Alrighty. Now, I do want to show you in a couple of slides some of those bill comparisons. So we had them before, but now we've got the uniform 2-tier and 3-tier alternatives all sort of lined up for your comparison. Before we talk about that, though, I want to make sure I present both sides of this topic because conservation is great. It sounds great, but it is not a top priority for all systems and all utilities. And in this way, it really makes this topic much more of a kind of policy decision than an industry standard type of recommendation. So as mentioned, this volumetric tiers, inclining blocks for those volumetric tiers would promote water conservation. It would save, in some systems, it would save on water supply costs, especially if you have to purchase water. That is not any longer the likely to be the case for the city, since you all are investing in your own in the new water treatment plant. On the kind of consideration side, of course, it's intended to reduce overall water usage and therefore sales. So it will have an impact to revenue, but it's a little bit uncertain when you're thinking about making the switch because we don't know what customer behaviors will be like and how, we don't know how they'll intersect with the weather of the upcoming year and other kind of social and economic conditions. And so it introduces some uncertainty there. There is also a requirement to kind of update the way customer bills are calculated. So that's a technical change to the billing system, which would require testing and the sort of the more technical side of things. And then customer understanding and response, introducing a change like this can, of course, create questions from your customers. And so you just kind of have to think about that and the city's capacity to handle those types of questions, concerns, complaints, should they come in. So I want to give you a fair and balanced kind of take on what might be the biggest of the potential adjustments here. All right. Moving on then to private fire charges. As part of the cost of service analysis, we did incorporate fire charges and their associated costs. Customers with fire protection, such as standby pipes, sprinkler systems on their property, are currently charged a fee of $15.20. That standby fee is meant to recover the cost of providing fire flow capacity, which is significantly greater than the capacity required for kind of normal flow, and it represents an added demand to the system. This requires that larger pipes and increased storage are available to kind of provide the necessary pressure and capacity for fire situations. Currently, the system has 37 private hydrants and 27 private fire lines, but only the fire lines are being charged that fee. Our recommendation is that the costs allocable to the increased capacity and readiness to provide fire flow be allocated across the private hydrants and the private lines in a way that is sort of proportional to the size of the line, much like the meter charges. I will point out that the true range of costs here is much wider than this, but we kind of compressed the proposed fee for these fire lines as kind of an initial step in the right direction and something that can be continued to be evaluated into the future. Oh, and sorry, one other note on this before I move on. As with the rest of this presentation, the rates otherwise presented kind of take into account this change. So if we opted not to go this route, then other usage and meter charges would change a little bit. So I just wanted to point that out here, and I might mention it again before the night is out. All right, looking at the customer impacts, then kind of specific to residential water bills for the topics we've covered so far. For a residential customer with 3/4 inch meter, the blue, I'm not sure if your colors show up the same as mine, but furthest to the left in kind of each of these categories, that's your 2026 rates. So that customer would be charged their meter charge and their usage charges. If they had 5 units of usage, it would total $50.75. If they had 20 units of usage in a month, it would total $149. Under the sort of uniform or flat rate for 2027, I'm actually just going to go ahead and show the changes here. The charge for 5 units would be $63.08. The charge for 20 units would be $178. So that's a 24% change for the lower amount of usage and a 17% change for the higher amount of usage. I'll just remind the group the reason those are not uniform is because part of that bar represents the meter charge, which is kind of uniform across both of the usage amounts. In the case of lower usage, if we were to have a 2 tiers instead of a uniform rate, that total bill would only go up by about 17%. And if we were to have 3 tiers, that total bill would only go up by about 5%. So you can really see the kind of savings if you're a relatively low user. On the flip side, the higher user sees kind of proportionally higher total bill amounts under the 2-tier and the 3-tier system because, of course, we have to sort of balance out the savings of the lower tiers with the cost recovery in the higher tiers. So that's how those numbers kind of shake out. And then the last topic, I believe, on the waterfront is the elevation surcharge. This would be a volumetric rate surcharge for customers at higher elevations to recover costs associated with pumping water to them. So those pumps require maintenance, they require electricity, they require future repair and replacement. So there are a sort of distinct and discrete set of costs associated with the pumps that serve your higher elevation customers. This charge would kind of specifically offset the costs of serving those customers at a higher elevation, and it would mean that their existing flat or tiered volumetric rates, whichever way we go on volumetric rates, would have an additional per unit surcharge. Just a simple table for you here based on our cost of service analysis and our review of the consumption in fiscal year 24, which is again what we were looking at. The calculated surcharge rate is about 74 cents per unit. And in that test year, it represented about 7.5% of residential usage in those elevated zones. So if we added this surcharge, other rates would decrease by about 6 cents a unit. So kind of a barely significant across the board change, but a change nonetheless, and it would impact other folks' bills to the good. This is a pretty common practice, although the kind of implementation varies by community, and of course is should be customized to their own costs and kind of system organization. Certainly, elevation surcharges or zones with different charges allocated to them is a very common practice. Okay, so just to kind of recap the items under consideration in the water rate structure, I'll keep charging on and we can come back to this at the end. Do a quick time check. Okay, great. All right, on the sewer side, the current rate structure includes a monthly base charge and a volumetric charge per unit of water consumed. This applies to residential, multifamily, commercial, and industrial customers. Again, with the multifamily charge being multiplied by the number of units. We did discuss this previously. Your sewer charges were increased over 20% this past year. So I showed that chart at the beginning. Revenue requirements don't necessitate a further increase to those kind of baseline sewer charges. The one thing that we had discussed was potentially implementing a volumetric charge to account for loading. So again, in the cost of service analysis, we looked at loading factors, which account for higher strength wastewater from commercial and industrial properties like restaurants, distilleries, manufacturing, laundromats, that sort of thing. Higher strength wastewater does create an additional, burden on your wastewater treatment system than typical kind of residential or office building or school type of wastewater. Under this approach, should we implement kind of a loading rate here for sewer, volumetric charges that account for loading would be structured as follows. So instead of the $8.50 per unit, which I believe is the current residential rate, the rate would be sort of aligned between residential and other multifamily residential, government, and schools to bring those back into alignment at $8.75 per unit. Commercial and industrial rates then would be higher because this is the classification of sort of that set of customers I described that produce higher strength effluent. It's not each and every one of these customers in these categories. And so it is a little bit of a blunt tool, but this generally does capture that set of customers. So should this be something that you all are interested in, this is kind of how it would look as implemented in the billing system. Again, I mentioned this at the top. I think this was an area where there was maybe the least strong head nodding or support as we talked about last time, but let's come back to this at the end. We certainly want to get your thoughts and guidance on whether to proceed with this type of change on the sewer side. And then last but not least, storm drainage. In July, we looked at the storm drainage revenue needs and the rate structure. As I mentioned earlier, the city is currently under recovering for its storm drainage costs. And there's a plan to add a few new positions in the near term to support the stormwater management program. The way storm drainage fees are billed, they're billed based on each property's impervious area, which is the industry standard. So that's great. Billing based on impervious area acknowledges that the rational nexus between increased runoff. So when rain falls and it hits a roof or pavement or something else that blocks it from infiltrating into the ground, it has to instead run off the property and into your system and places demand on the city to manage that flow, keep it off the roads, and keep it from overly polluting your receiving water bodies. So more impervious area means more demand placed on the city. That is a kind of indisputable relationship there. And that is why impervious area is kind of the industry standard for calculating and charging stormwater fees. Here in the city, however, the relationship between the amount of impervious area and the amount that a property is charged is a little bit skewed. So right now you have 17 different tiers. I'm sorry to kind of use that term again, but I have no choice. 17 different tiers where the first tier is sort of single family homes, and then building off of that, non-single family properties with greater and greater amounts of impervious area. The way your structure is set up, your folks with smaller amounts of impervious area are actually paying more per unit. So if you just imagine like 1 square foot of impervious surface area, your smaller commercial properties are paying more for that 1 square foot of impervious area than your larger commercial properties are. They're actually paying about 6 times more. So it's pretty significant. And I've tried to capture all of that in the graph here, but I know it doesn't tell much of a story on its own. What it does show is if you look along the bottom, it shows sort of increasing amounts of impervious surface area and the current rate that is charged for that amount of impervious surface area. So there's kind of a steeper incline at the beginning of this chart where you're looking at kind of smaller commercial properties that get a little bit bigger. But when you get out to the very biggest things in town that have sprawling parking lots and huge warehousey, big box store type structures, there are just huge kind of ranges of impervious area that are charged the same amount, and we end up with a little bit of inconsistency or inequity in how those properties are charged. So I know that's a mouthful, but our recommendation is, oh, sorry, you can tell if someone was jumping in. Our recommendation in short is just to adjust the kind of relationship between these impervious area ranges and the fee that they're charged so that there is more consistency in the charge per unit of impervious area. So doing so will actually increase your overall rate base, and it will mitigate the need to increase that whole charge to single family customers. If we were to keep things the way they are, then our recommendation would be to take a big step and increase your stormwater rates about 225% across the board. I showed you this number a month or so ago. It's a big number, but again, you are under recovering for this utility and it's an important set of services. If you were to kind of adjust the rate structure at the same time, then you'd be looking at a structure like this, which again, a lot of numbers up on the board. But the impact to your single family properties would be more like 200% instead of 225, which is a difference. But then your bigger customers would see a much bigger relative change that better reflects their actual demand to the system and kind of puts everybody back on a level uh, playing field there. All right, happy to come back to that if there are questions or comments. Real quick first, I just want to show a bill comparison with some of your peer and neighboring communities. That's often a question is sort of how does this compare to what folks are seeing elsewhere? Some notes of caution, though, of course, as we launch into this. Every utility has different infrastructure needs, different stories, different backlogs. So it's not always an apples to apples comparison. We might be talking about your neighbor who's kept up with things really well over time and doesn't have you know, big needs or big costs. We could be looking at someone who's just, had a major pipe collapse and has some huge things ahead of them. So everybody's got a different background. All of these rates also have different effective dates. So of course, we're talking about FY27. What's published and otherwise available for your peer communities would be their current rates. So there might be at least kind of a year difference in some of these. So just something to keep in mind. And then, of course, some communities update their rates on sort of different cycles. So there could be even a bigger gap to consider. So I'm still happy to show it. I just want to make sure those cautions are out there. Starting with the water bill for this is just kind of an arbitrary 9 CCF per month. This is plugged in right now under the Philomath new structure as if it were in the two-tiered system. So I just want to kind of point that out. I'm happy to present this other ways if folks want to see it other ways. Your existing rates are kind of middle of the pack. If you were to kind of make the move to the full FY27 proposed rates, you would be kind of toward the higher side. The fixed fee element here is the darker blue color, and you can see that is that's all over the place. I think the proposed value here would be a little bit on the higher side, but it does certainly vary both in the amount and in the proportion from community to community. Again, if we sort of changed all of these to FY27, it would be a little bit more apples to apples. I suspect the proposed Philomath rates would still be a little bit closer to the top, but not leading the pack here. On the sewer side, I have only Philomath new, not because it's the same as current under the proposed structure for residential customers. So you're at about $81 for 5 CCF per month now, as compared to Newport, which is a little bit higher, and some of the other communities a little bit lower. And then last but not least here on the stormwater or storm drainage side, the the proposed value for Philomath here at $10 for a single family property, a little bit lower than where Corvallis is now, a little bit higher than Toledo. Some of the other communities don't have a storm drainage charge. So again, not totally apples to apples, but we wanted to show you what your neighbors are doing. I will say from a sort of nationwide standpoint, I'm seeing a lot more kind of about $10 a month stormwater utility charges, whereas 5 years ago it was about $5 a month. So there's definitely a move in this direction, and this number seems very kind of typical to me to support, again, an important set of services. All right, last but not least, just wanted to pull all of this kind of together. It's imperfect because they don't all charge stormwater, but if we had sort of an imaginary customer with a 9 CCF water usage, 5 CCF sewer usage, so this would be under a situation where we've got winter averaging, so sewer is a little bit lower in a given month, and a stormwater charge for a typical single family house. This is kind of how the numbers shake out. So just want to make sure you have that for your consideration. And I believe that is the end of the slide. And I'm happy to take your lead on how to proceed.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. Could you stop sharing the screen just so we can see your face? Oh, big. Yeah, look at that. Wonderful. Okay, well, I wrote down questions. Do people each have questions they'd like to ask? I'm wondering if we should just kind of go around and ask some of our,
Do we want to kind of do it by section, like
start
handle
with
water first?
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
Like that.
So, okay, so Jen, we'll start with water questions, and then we'll move on to sewer questions, and we'll move on to storm questions. I can go later if other people would like to jump into the pack with water. Does anyone have anything pressing? Please, Councilor Felker.
Perhaps this is a small one. The private fire lines and hydrants, it's a huge change for most of them. And I am concerned about that. I mean, it's more than double, well more than double,
Yeah.
triple in some cases. So I would be concerned to spring that on them. Also, the elevation surcharge, I do believe that's gonna run into some complaints because we're doing it after the fact, after the houses have been built and they're up there, and all of a sudden for us to tack on a elevation surcharge, I think is difficult to do because I know some of them feel like they have, a contractor with us, and for us to change the rules. I understand the upkeep of the pump station is the reason for that, but to my knowledge, we haven't had that before, is that correct?
I have an elevation surcharge before.
So springing them on it is hard. And if we could step it up, if we have to do that, step it up.
That's kind of the plan we're gonna do there, Diane. We're gonna do a phased-in implementation, and that would be right in line with it. That way, we can warn them in advance, hey, this is gonna happen. And eventually, 2 or 3 years will catch up to real time, so.
And can I ask a backup question? Would that be okay, Diane? Could it be in a slower rate rather than, you're talking about a 3-year period? Could that stepping up be at a more elongated period of time? Or does it?
It's tough.
It just seems, for me, in watching this, my heart is in my stomach in that these are huge increases we're talking about. And to look at those charts and say, okay, Philomath, you are now going to be paying set amount when I think our rates are already pretty comparable. I mean, we're up there. And so I know there are needs, but maybe we'll have to do this in a more palatable way than with such, to me, which are enormous increases.
I agree. I just think maybe for right now, it might be most helpful if we focus on questions for Jen.
Absolutely.
While we have her, and then the council can always come back and do our own work session to deliberate and decide what we want to do. But I think if we can focus on sort of clarifying questions or getting more information from Jen, that would be helpful. Councilor Salsa?
So, Jen, thanks for the comprehensive report here. And you've cleared up actually a lot of questions of mine just by kind of going through the stuff with, why some of the large sort of increases here. But my question is, what had us focus only on the next fiscal year, only to 2027, when typically, what's going to happen in 2028 when we have more projects already stacked up? You know what I'm saying? So are we actually going far enough looking into the future? Because it just seems like 1 year, well, 2 years effectively, not really. It's just short. Anyway, I just wanted to hear kind of what the thinking was. Yeah.
Yep, I absolutely appreciate that. Our analysis and our financial model was actually looking over a 5 to 10 year period. So for the purpose of presenting the potential changes to rate design and some of the nuance in how those numbers change in response to these decisions, we wanted to focus on 1 year rather than looking at a whole slew of numbers. But we do have prepared a kind of rate schedule, if you will, over the next 5 years. If we end up wanting to do more of a stepped up implementation, that can certainly be accommodated. But what we'll turn over to the city at the conclusion of this engagement is a longer term rate schedule for your use or consideration in decision making moving forward.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Crocker?
I have one more. On the cost, you mentioned something about balancing the cost increases, that the larger volume use has a larger, so it allows the the lower usage to have a smaller increase, almost like subsidizing the smaller amount. Am I making any sense? Is that what you said? And
yes. So essentially, in this kind of cost of service rate design process, we take all of the costs, we back them up, and to figure out, from which element of the rates should they be recovered. So you end up with a set of costs that should be recovered from residential volumetric usage. So if you were to charge a flat uniform rate for that volumetric usage, then every unit would be charged the same amount. If you start to differentiate, that lower usage is charged less per unit and higher usage is charged more per unit, then you've got to get the math to work out, basically. So the lower you want to set your kind of lower rates, the higher you have to set your higher rates to make sure that overall you're getting the right amount of revenue from that kind of subset of customers and subset of rate design. So I don't know if I would call it subsidy exactly, because it's an intentional sort of rate design. But you do have to make sure that you're recovering the same and correct amount overall. I hope that helps.
Councilor Andrade?
I can't seem to see it on here, but I think there's low income rates, correct? Which I guess
There are.
there are. Are they written in here or they are? I'm having a,
Are you looking at the slides? Is that
yeah,
what you're looking at, the slides? I don't know if I covered that in the slides themselves. Our intention would be to retain that same low income reduction across the utilities.
like the same difference between the low income and the base, like whatever the average base rate would be, base or
That's right. Yep.
and volumetric rate.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. And then I know that I can't remember what had been said before, but do they have the updated cost for the water treatment plant in the, okay, cool.
That's actually the major driver for the water additional costs that we're gonna see with the water treatment plant. So that $12 million we got from the state legislature several years ago was great, but it's not gonna cover the cost of constructing the treatment plant and reservoir today in today's dollars. Inflation's, as we know, what inflation's done the last 34 years. So that $12 million isn't going to go as far. The difference is going to need to be made up for with utility rates. And so that's what's triggering this large increases in most part, is the increased amount that we'll need to pay for the water plant. There's other projects built into there, but the big one is the water plant.
I had a couple questions. I think the first, I know you talked about infrastructure costs and staff costs. One of our strategic plan goals was to establish reserves for our enterprise funds. Do these also like account for that? Okay,
Yes.
okay. And then the multifamily change, I know you just mentioned that, it sort of brings us more in line with industry standards and everything. Does that have a revenue impact one way or another, or is it just kind of revenue neutral, but changing the way we're counting it?
The proposed rates are revenue neutral for all of the fixed water charges. So it does sort of reallocate the
Okay.
charges a little bit, but making that change wouldn't reduce your revenue the way we've presented it here.
But it also wouldn't like increase our revenue. It just sort of
And
gets
it
the
wouldn't
same amount
increase
of
your
revenue.
revenue.
Okay, perfect. And then this might be more of a Rich question. I don't know. If there's a private fire hydrant, does that mean there's also a private fire line, or are they two disconnected things?
They're different.
Okay,
Yeah.
works for me.
But having said that, right now, I think it's reasonable that we start looking at the hydrants that have basically had no cost
Right,
before.
right.
But it doesn't cost something to feed those lines.
Right.
So at any rate, that makes a lot of sense to make it level across the playing field.
Okay. And then on the note of the fire lines, your slide about the increased rates, did you have percentages for each of because obviously the bottom one is a ton of money, but like how many of our fire lines are actually that bottom one? I guess I'm curious. I don't know if you have that data.
I do have it. I don't know if I have it ready enough that you all would want to
Sure,
wait on it, but I'm
we
going
can-
to follow up with that.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, and then I feel like the rest of these are more questions for our staff, so I can wait on that. Oh, okay. This is also water. I guess in my mind, it makes more sense for the elevation surcharge to do that on the base rate rather than on the usage. If the philosophy behind utility rates is that the base rate pays for the infrastructure we have to have, whether you're using it or not, and the usage rate pays for the cost of the water. Because if you live on the top of a hill, we have to have pumps, we have to have reservoirs, we have to have all of that, whether you're using it or not. So I guess I'm just curious why that in your recommendation is factored into the usage rate instead of the base rate. And I know those aren't the technical terms, so I apologize, but yeah.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, that's a good question. I would maybe tweak that sort of foundational statement a little bit. This is not designed so that the fixed charges recover all of your fixed costs. The vast majority of your costs are fixed. So if everybody turned off their taps and didn't use a drop of water, you would still have an, extensive system in the ground that needs to be maintained and upside, upgraded over time, and you'd have this treatment plant that you're building and all of that. So it's not exactly that we're kind of dividing costs in those two ways. And so, therefore that was not kind of a foundational interpretation in the elevation costs. Now, it probably could be argued or reasonable that it maybe could be split between fixed and usage charges, because the water that is being consumed is the water that has to be pumped with that electricity. So there's sort of a little bit of nuance there, but there's also an element of trying to not make it overly complicated. So maybe we don't want two different sets of fixed charges and two different sets of usage charges. So that's kind of how we landed, where we landed. It's a little bit of an art and a science, but there you have it.
Okay, thank you. Any other water questions? Okay.
I asked just on that question, so this is all kind of in the thought that we would go to a 2-tier or 3-tiered, based on what you said, if we just kept a single tiered system, would you have any concerns with putting the elevation surcharge on the base fee if we just had the one tier across the board?
Oh, on the base fee instead? No, I think that would be reasonable, defensible. It would change the numbers a bit, but happy to look at it if that's something you're interested in
Okay.
pursuing.
So I think go either way. It was
Yeah.
just, again, keep it simple.
Okay. Well, if there's no other water questions, then we can move on to sewer, which I don't imagine there's too many questions about, since nothing has really changed from our last presentation except for the potential of, well, I guess that didn't even change, the sort of load costs. Any sewer questions? Going once, going twice? All right. Then,
I mean, I'm not.
sure, yeah. Okay, then we have stormwater.
You know,
Any stormwater questions for Jen? Yeah, Diane, or excuse me, Council Crocker.
The impervious area that you spoke about, is it the percentage of the lot or is it actually square feet?
It's
on the-
actually square footage of impervious area. Yep.
as your house sits and your driveway, anything that's basically,
Sure,
yeah,
impervious.
yeah. Well, I just meant, yeah.
But yeah,
If you have
but
a
that-
4,000 square foot
Yeah, on a
total
little
lot,
lot, you're still paying the same. As somebody with a large lot with that same, no. But then wouldn't it be square foot if you did that?
It is square foot, that's what we're doing, yeah.
That's what I mean.
but potentially, yeah, so if you have a 1 acre lot, but your house is sitting on 2,000 square feet.
Yeah,
As opposed to a half acre lot and it's still a 2,000,
Right.
it's still 2,000. It's,
okay,
yeah, that's what's being collected,
Yes,
so
okay.
it's apples to apples that way, yeah.
Counselor Nielsen?
But I did thought, I'm remembering, didn't you mention that there was some inequity of NR impervious area service charges? Was there something you mentioned something about inequity in that? That there was something not, that we could adjust. Is there something on that when you were discussing it? How would that adjustment impact our revenue?
So the adjustment that I'm proposing on your storm drainage rate, let me see if I can say this a little bit of a different way, because it is, it's not the easiest topic. So currently your, uh, pull up my math here, your, uh, kind of small commercial properties are paying, let's see, kind of equivalent to a single family house. So $4.45 for up to 3,000 square feet of impervious area. Your biggest, so if I just divide that out, that's about 0.14 cents per square foot. Your biggest properties with the most impervious area are being charged $292 for up to 2 million square feet of impervious area, which is, I can't even do this fraction on the fly, but it's significantly less per square foot of impervious. So if you imagine, no matter how your kind of properties are divided up, if rain is falling on impervious surfaces anywhere in the city and flowing into your system, it places the same demand on you to manage it. So there is no reason to charge significantly less per unit of impervious area for the bigger guys than you do for the smaller guys. So my recommendation is just to kind of decompress your rate structure so that somebody with 10 times as much impervious area is being charged 10 times as much. Somebody with 100 times as much impervious area is being charged 100 times as much. Um, this can feel, this might feel extreme. I will tell you, it is the industry standard to kind of charge an amount per unit that scales indefinitely, so that equity is established and retained between properties and between customer classes. I hope that helps a bit on that topic.
Yeah, thank you. Counselor Crocker?
So when you said we're under recovering, that's a very big part of the reason is that we are so cheap.
It's, well, I think it's that paired with even if that were the case, rates could be set high enough to recover the right amount. They're just low. They're just lower than that currently.
Just too low.
Yeah, I would feel better about recovering the right amount if it were done in an equitable fashion, but I can't say it's sort of because of that we're kind of under recovering at the moment.
Counselor Salsa?
That was it.
Well, go team. I guess I just had a clarifying question, Jen, and I apologize if I'm misunderstanding something. Your slide 4 said our stormwater revenue requirements were 17% higher than what we're getting.
Yep.
But then we have to raise it by 225%?
Yeah, I know that's a tough one, and that really is because of that kind of under recovery currently. So the storm drainage fee is not bringing in enough, so we have to kind of close the gap and address additional revenue needs in the coming year.
Wait, okay, I guess I'm not, but, so then what is this, what does slide 4 mean then when it says our revenue requirements are 17% higher? Because it sounds like you're saying they're actually a lot more than 17%.
So what I intended for slide 4, and I'm sorry that it is causing a little bit of confusion here, is that your kind of your storm drainage program costs were X amount in FY 26 and 17% more than that in FY 27. We're not bringing in that full amount in 26. So there remains kind of a gap there that has to be filled to get to the full 27 amount.
So the FY 26 in here is already assuming the like 200% increase, or?
Well, that's the gap.
FY20
Yeah.
is not representing your revenue, it's representing your revenue needs.
Gotcha.
So there's it.
We're behind the curve.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I misunderstood the, okay. Yes, Councilor Andretti?
I have a summary question for like all of them. Would now be a good time
If you
to
want.
ask?
I guess, does anyone else have any storm drain specific questions? Okay, then sure.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, just because there are so many pieces everywhere, and my brain kind of is taking a while to put them all together, the water rates would be based on, let's see, potentially usage. And then there wouldn't be a difference commercially or like for users, user type, correct? Like commercial versus residential or,
So the water rates would be recovered from fixed charges and usage or volumetric charges. One of
Yes.
the
Sorry,
questions yeah, no, that's okay. I just want to make sure I don't cause any other confusion in trying to answer this question. So
understandable.
the volumetric charges, there's a question in front of this body as to how to proceed with those, whether uniform or tiered.
Mhm.
The volumetric charges, and that's for residential. For other customer types, so the multifamily, industrial, commercial, we still recommend a uniform volumetric rate for that set of
That's right.
properties. I think that's what you're asking.
Yes, thank you. And then what was that rate? Was that was the 27 uniform rate? Or,
Yes, 771.
okay, so they would be doing, like, they would have that rate. The commercial would have that base uniform rate. And residents might have that rate, or they might have one of the tiers, correct? Okay, cool. Thank you for clarifying that. And then of course you have the added stuff regarding the fire and the elevation that we'll discuss at a later time. And then for sewage, you have essentially residential, multi-residential, city government schools, or commercial industrial, correct?
That the distinction there would be only if this body is interested in pursuing a loading surcharge, essentially, to recover some of this higher strength related costs. If not, then it would be a uniform rate throughout.
Thank you. And then for the storm drainage, it's what we were just discussing about, so this would be applied to everyone, like all of the different properties, and it would be just making it more equitable so that people are paying what they owe rather than more than what they owe or less than what they owe. Is that correct?
Very well said. Yes, yes, that is the goal.
Thank you. Okay, I appreciate having that broken out like that.
Jen, just to be very clear that some of the proposed additional charges such as the change in the water line hydrant rate, the elevation charges, those kinds of things, if we didn't do that, we would have to then make that up in a higher, potentially higher fixed charges and potentially then usage charges to sort of make up the revenue need, those things would be taken care of. Is that accurate?
That's exactly right. Yep, we're in a closed system, so money we don't get from one place has to come from another place, and we'll make all the numbers work out based on your direction, but we want to make sure we're kind of incorporating the right elements.
Yep. Okay, cool. Thank you.
That was a great segue, unless if anyone else has any final questions. I guess, I know we're gonna come back and talk about this more, but what would be helpful tonight? I guess, do people have further information they'd like to be brought back, or anything for our staff that would be helpful for our next discussion? Councilor Edwin?
I have a couple of quick staff questions. In general, my thinking is the more differentiated we can make it, the more equitable it becomes, but then it also appears that it gets more costly the more things we take into consideration. So I guess in a general sense currently, if we break all, are we gonna be able to get impervious service area without a huge expense? Are we gonna be, are we prepared to do all those things? Will the billing system we use cover 4 tier, there's kind of a lot, I don't wanna all of a sudden. Okay, well, I was kind of just shotgunning all the different types of changes. So yes, I dumped the whole fruit basket. Yeah. But if we picked all of those differentiators, right, for all the different things, is that a nightmare scenario for you? I guess it's.
Some, a couple places, yes.
Okay.
Issues there that we'd have to set up. We'd have to redo the whole billing system. And that takes time. We have to plan for that. We have to do it in 1 month. And so that's something, think about it. That's going to be a crash course. We won't be able to test it. We did this in Albany or Newport. We had Casel's help. We did it, but we did it. It was not easy. But, the other thing that I would like to do, I don't know if council was ever aware of this, I would like to break up on the bills, base charge and the volume charge. We get more calls on what does this thing consist of? It's in our system, but we have to if we're going to do this, we're going to redo that. But if you throw a tiered system at me, I have no idea what that's going to do. So that would be stuff we'd have to look into.
So in summary, it's doable, but the more of it we do, the more
Complex
it gets difficult.
And you have to do it in 1 month. It's not something that we can space out.
Jen, I saw your hand up for that question. Did you have something else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, and Mike, thanks for addressing the kind of tiered usage changes to the system a little bit more comprehensively than I did earlier. I just wanted to add on the storm drainage side, the proposed structure does take advantage of your existing kind of tiers and the data that's already in the system. So that one is not the biggest change. It's really the volumetric usage change that's kind of the biggest.
Thank you, Jen. Right on.
Councilor Crocker?
I would be interested in seeing the cost. I guess I would be talking about the water. If we left everything the way we do without the elevation, without the fire charge. I'm not proposing that's the right thing to do, but I would like to be able to compare.
That'd be the 771 that's in there.
Oh, it's already in there.
Yeah, the 771 would be
No addition.
for the volumetric.
Okay.
Because then when you look at adding the here, adding the other, then and each of those gives us an what the change would be to that base charge of the 771 for 2027. Yeah.
For most people, but not everybody.
Councilor Nielsen?
Chris, you mentioned that the grant that we received was a great one, but not in our current economic stance. Is there anything that we can look forward to with the water treatment plant that we could apply for, or something that would, because more increases for our populace is not something that any of us want. So are there additional grants that we can maybe put effort in, the staff could work on to maybe cover part of the water treatment plan or help along the way?
There are. The tricky part with the water plant is the timing, right? Nobody wants to issue a grant for something you already started. So that's one. Engineering has started. We haven't started construction yet, so that's to our benefit. So there are a few out there that we could go for. But otherwise, you're just looking at what's the least expensive way to borrow the money to pay that back. But nobody's issuing grants on debt service, right? So you're never going to get it then. So there's a little bit of a window between now and when we start construction, but it's a narrow window. You know, we've already gone to the state legislature multiple times and gotten multiple millions of dollars, sets of millions of dollars, but it's not something we couldn't go to. But now they're going to be out of session until next year. And you're talking probably like, I don't know what, this time next year, September of next year before we would know. And I think we're going to be itching to be building the treatment plant before that, before this one falls apart on us. So there's a timing issue and yeah.
Okay, we probably have like 2 more minutes before we should take a little recess before the regular session. I guess, Mike, Chris, is there anything firm you need from us right now? I mean, I think we'll plan to come back and have more of a council deliberation work session, but yeah. No, but is there anything else that would be helpful for us, from us, for you two to help prepare for that, or Jen? I don't like, is there anything else that you feel like we haven't made clear about kind of our questions on?
I'm still kind of not sure which way you want to go, flat or tiered. I don't, oops, sorry.
I don't know if we know that. I
Yeah.
think that's what we're talking about. Yeah.
Can you do that in 2 minutes?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that will be a main point of discussion.
I mean, the flat rate,
So,
the flat's easy, we already got that. We just, we
Right.
update it. With the
Right.
tiered, I'd have to go figure out what we did, in Newport. We got rid of it in Newport because it's so complex.
I think the question is, what do you all need to see
Yeah,
so that you
we're-
come together and make a decision?
If I can interject, I think they just need some time,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the presentation's great. I think we answered the
Yeah.
additional questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to look at that third tier, kind of a repeat on the other presumptions that were made. So I just think we're gonna need to spend some time and in a
Yeah.
future meeting to have you be able to talk about the pros and cons. I mean, I've got my opinions, Mike's got opinions, everybody's got opinions. We really haven't had time in this work session to express the opinions because we're still gathering data. So I think we just need to postpone the future meeting and give some time to deliberate.
We kind of have our arms.
Right. No, it's squeeze. The last thing I guess I'll maybe ask for, and this might be even more like a Kevin thing, is just what are the ramifications if we end up pushing back some of the infrastructure project? Like if we don't want to raise the rates this much, and instead of fixing 17th Street or whatever it was in 2026, we fix it in 2028, or like, is that critical? Like, is it actively failing, or is it just like we need to replace it sometime in the next,
We started projects around.
Jen, did you get that?
I did not know. What was the question?
We're just curious what it would do to your modeling if we started postponing infrastructure projects.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Um, well, we're happy to kind of run some other scenarios if you want. Generally, of course, it would reduce your near-term revenue requirements, but I will say, like I mentioned early on, some of the water capital projects are, modeled to be paid for with debt issued or borrowed, I should say, in the near term. So because that really like takes a big chunk of capital costs and spreads them out over a long period of time, pushing those projects back a year or two isn't gonna it won't mean that you necessarily need $2 million less in a given year when you were only paying the debt service on that 2 million to begin with. if that makes sense. So there's a little bit of a blunted impact
Sure.
on making that change, but I'm happy to kind of look at some other scenarios if you all would.
We did look at that project list. We're
We did.
very selective of what we're actually gonna do
Yeah.
because we don't want to be charging utility rates for projects that are aspirational, right? So this was a look, but I'll look again and just double check on those numbers and I can bring back a report
Okay, great.
when we're ready to discuss that. But like I said, we were very selective on projects we included and when we included them.
Okay.
Yeah, it's super quick and I don't know that it's even feasible, but I wanted to ask ahead of time because it might take a minute. Something that would help me with the tiered rates thing is if I had like a Three Bears type scenario of like a very light user perspective bill, like a medium user, and then like the whole shebang user that has the bright green lawn with flowers everywhere, you know, like fountain and like a upper heavy tiered user just, and I mean, honestly, realistically, and then sort of the demographic of those here would be amazing, but probably not practical. But even if we could just, I mean, I could kind of surmise in my head.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you could drive around and go, that guy's bill's going way up or whatever. You know, like, for the,
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty is some of that will be, we can definitely provide the three
Yeah.
scenarios, but we can't tell you with those three scenarios is like the median household income for each of those household
Right.
scenarios, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't want to make the false assumption that smaller households have less ability to pay for water.
Right.
In some cases, it's just the opposite, right? And some of your smallest households are the most affluent in town, and some of your largest households are the least affluent, and you know where that a 10% increase is really going to hurt that larger household, whereas a small household from a more affluent household, 10% or 20%
Not matter.
Yeah. We don't make false assumptions, I guess, is just my concern. But scenarios, what it would cost for that household size, we can come up with that.
it'd be useful for me. One concern of mine is that we accidentally get some pretty moderate, like kind of like heavy normal users, not like water wasting, right, in that top tier where it gets pretty dang expensive. And I don't mind penalizing people wasting water necessarily, but I don't want it to be unfair, you know.
One question,
Okay, really?
Do other cities do anything to promote home gardening and growing their own? Is there any kind of thing that other areas are doing that gives some advantage to those that are growing their own produce and such? Because it's so expensive in the city with water rates and such. Are other cities doing anything to promote that or?
Typically I see consideration for home gardening or irrigation on the sewer side. You all already have a winter averaging approach to calculating sewer charges. So you assume that there's some irrigation happening and that water is not also, feeding back into the sewer system. So I've seen that same kind of approach for, called out for gardening as well. I don't know off the top of my head of cases where there are reduced or alternate water rates kind of specific for gardening. Maybe rain barrel promotion. It's gotta-
Okay,
Great.
well, it's 7 PM, so we are going to recess for 5 minutes. So my apologies to everyone who's here for the regular meeting. We're running just a couple minutes behind. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Jen. And before we recess, there's people here. So I just want to say, if anyone is here for public comment, to make sure to grab a form on the back table and turn it into Crystal, and then we can make sure that you get called up for public comment. So with that, we will recess until 7:06 PM, or we'll adjourn the work session, return at 7:06 PM.